All right. Hello, Mrs. Keith, and hello, Mr. Fulco. How you doing today?
Well, hello, we're just fine. How are you?
I am great. I tell you, I am very excited about this episode because it starts to things are starting to collide. History is starting to collide. I grew up in Allendale, and I grew up in Allendale around the 80s, 70s, and 80s. And talking to my mother will always bring up, and I don't want to mess this up, I think it was Papa's chicken.
Huh.
It was
anything about it?
I don't know anything about
okay. We have a Louis Brissett, who mother worked at Papa's Chicken.
Louis Brissett is a good friend of mine.
Yeah, Louis Brissett used to always tell us about the Italian heritage of that establishment. And another thing that I will bring up all the time is the different stores on the different corners of Allendale that were owned by descendants of the Italian descendants, right?
Right.
And one of the things that we never talk about in Shreveport is what was Allendale before it was I won't say before, but I just say Allendale was a home for immigrants.
Right.
Yes, it was.
Right.
And before we go deep into it, I'm just going to ask you to introduce yourself. I'm going to start with you, Ms. Keith. Can you please introduce yourself to the podcast public?
Okay. Well, my name is Susan Keith. My mother is Dorothy Fulco Keith. And in fact, let me show you a picture of her. This is her engagement picture when in 1953.
Beautiful.
When she was going to marry my father. And he was a newspaper reporter for the Shreveport Times. And after they married, he switched to the Shreveport Journal, the evening paper.
Gotcha.
And my grandfather built a house. Well, you have to understand, Buena Vista Street became known as Fulco Street.
Oh, right.
Almost every house was owned by a Fulco brother. Because we're talking, the Fulco brothers had, what, eight boys and 2 girls.
And there were 15 altogether. Some were stillborn.
Okay. And actually, the 2 girls never had children, but the guys, all but Uncle Vince, had children. So we got cousins all over. So anyway, they all bought houses on Buena Vista Street.
Buena Vista, right.
Oh, okay. All right. So how about yourself, Mr. Fulco? Can you please introduce yourself?
My name is Charles R. Fulco Jr. I go by the name of Chuck. I was raised in Allendale. I left and went to Queensboro for a while. I lived with my uncle on Dalzell Street for 6 months and half the 3rd grade, and went back to we moved to Queensboro. My father built a house in Queensboro, and I ended up going back to 1460 Buena Vista and lived with my aunt Johanna, who was the mainstay of the family. She was the eldest sister, and we had her sister was Florence, who contracted tuberculosis and died early. And I still own her house. In fact, I own the property you have in your background, the Allendale Garden of Love and Hope.
Oh, okay.
Operated by Miss.
You want to show them here?
It's operated by Miss. What's Miss Lucy?
Miss Rosie
Chapo.
Yes. She goes to my church.
She is.
Okay.
I call her the mayor of Allendale.
Yes.
Sweetheart.
Now that is a picture of Aunt Johanna in front of the house where the garden is now.
Oh, great!
And
beautiful.
And let me show you a picture of her in her garden that was on that property. And she also had a chicken house. And my uncle talked about when he was a kid, one rooster would start crowing, and a lot of people had chickens in their backyards, and they'd all start crowing at the same time, wake everybody up. So that was a memory he had of living there.
Oh, wow. I love that. I love that type, because we actually had chickens when I stayed on Christmas Street. We had the neighbor next to us had chickens. And they will wake you up. They were the best alarm clock in the world.
That's right.
My father, Charlie, was the youngest of all the brothers and sisters. And he was upset because the rooster wouldn't lay an egg. So he put him under a basket and left him there because he wouldn't lay an egg until my grandfather says, "Where's my rooster?" I said, "That damn rooster won't lay an egg. I'm going to keep him under that basket until he does."
So I had a little birds and the bees lesson after that, I guess.
I know, right? I love those type of stories. I mean, it just, I mean, those type of things are what make you, you know, just long for the good times, right? You know, the good times are kind of built in your youth, and then you kind of see it in the youth,
right?
Your grandkids and your kids and things like that. So those, and then those type of stories need to be passed down generation to generation.
Oh yeah,
they really do. But you know, Allendale started out as a very wealthy neighborhood.
Okay.
And it was mansions.
Mm-hmm.
My grandfather built a house at 108. Well, it's a duplex, 108, 110 North Allen.
Okay.
And it's still there.
Mm-hmm.
And then you own Aunt Florence's house, which is next door to it, which is on the
112 North Allen,
which is the corner
of Buena Vista and Allen Avenue.
Yeah, and it's still there. And
I remember as a kid, there was a mansion there.
The Snyder mansion.
2 or 3 stories, and it had a basement in it.
Mm-hmm.
And for whatever reason, it disappeared. I don't remember, I was young, but it had that basement. And we used to go swimming in that basement when the rain would fill it up. But eventually people start throwing all the trash in there.
Or was it the cistern?
I know they do have a cistern.
The cistern is still there.
The cistern.
Oh.
It's under the side stairs. The duplex is 108, 110. Well, 108, if you go out the side of it, you got that side road. What do you call that? The access road. Mm-hmm. And you got a store on the corner that faces Ford Street. Anyway, under those side stairs, you can see the concrete where they covered up the cistern. But it's still there.
It's got a ring of bricks around. It's got
a big.
I think it's a brick cistern going all the way down.
And there's a retaining wall around that entire block that's still there, and some steps, stone steps that come up onto the property that were there from when the mansion was still there. And my uncle says back in the 40s, there was like a big stepping stone where you would pull your carriage up and step out onto that stone, and it had one of those wrought iron horse heads with the loop on it that you could hook your horses up to.
Yeah.
So it was still there into the 40s. And then on the facing forward at North Allen, is there a convenience store there? Or I don't know if it's open right now.
Well, there's a used tire store, whatever you call it, whatever you want. I know it's got hundreds of open tires out in the back that I've reported several times, and no one.
Okay. Well, anyway, on that lot, there was a big white 2-story mansion that was there even into the 1950s before it was torn down. So, those were the kind of houses that were there. And then, of course, 1925, there was the big fire, the Allendale fire, because of the two broken water mains. And when it was rebuilt, it was smaller homes. And that's when the immigrants began moving in.
Mm-hmm. And we have to also remember, that was an area that, like you said, we were talking about earlier, where Governor Allen stayed in that area.
Right.
And so, and it was, that area has always been, if not a port or a opening to a port, it has always been where the people, if you think about, old cityscapes, the ports would always go into the neighborhood behind that. And that was probably the city center.
All
right. And that city center, what we look at now is downtown Shreveport. Allendale was probably considered back in the day, a suburb of that city center.
Yeah.
Right.
So it just, the evolution of cities, I say in the Atlanta area.
Right.
And the evolution of cities and the sizes and how we've grown and sprawled out. We look at, if you know anything about Atlanta is Atlanta, and then it's Decatur. To this day, everybody just thinks Decatur, oh, it's always been there. No, Decatur was a suburb of Atlanta.
Right.
And a lot of the things that, oh yeah, Allendale strong, you know it. You know it. And a lot of the history.
I love Allendale.
Oh yeah, a lot of the history. We were not, as a residents of Allendale, we were not taught the history of Allendale.
Right.
It was kind of passed on to us in little stories from our family, right? But there was some pain within our family where some stories were not told.
Right.
And that's why I love talking to you all, because you all are telling the story that shows within the evolution of Shreveport, within the evolution of Allendale. Things go up, things go down. That's natural evolution, right? Now let's talk about the past. Now, before we started recording, you would Mr. Fulco, you were telling me about how the Italian immigrants had migrated up from New Orleans and Bayou Lafourche. Can you go into that a little bit more?
Well, I know they moved. They ended from what I heard. They ended up, when they immigrated to New Orleans
from Cefalù in Sicily.
Cefalù, Sicily.
Yeah.
Oh.
And
okay.
and the problems, they had problems there, or they were not happy with New Orleans proper, so they moved.
There was a lot of prejudice against
them. To Pankerville and Bayou Lafourche in that area. And from that area, my family, or my father and brothers and grandfather and grandmother, moved up to Shreveport.
Because there were other Cefalù residents that had moved up here. They got here about 1910, something like that.
And so how they migrated, why they left South Louisiana, I don't know, and I'm sorry they did, but because I feel like I belong in South Louisiana. But they moved to Allendale, and I'm gonna give you a rundown on one street on Buena Vista. My aunt had the house at 1460. Next door was the Galfins, a Jewish family. Michael's an Irish family. Next door to them was my Uncle Pat. The next door to that was a duplex that Uncle Pat owned. Then there were two more houses past that. I don't remember who lived there. Then Mr. Joe and Floma Viola lived there. Then my Uncle Camille, her grandfather, lived there. And below that, the last house on the block was a Cadaro. So, and then the other side of the street is about the same. They had the Socolos, and I remember Al Ford was a mechanic, but he was a race driver, and all the kids just loved it. You idolized Al because he was a race driver. And then we had the Flores family, and then
they were Mexican.
They were Mexicans, and Adrian, my
where were the Currys?
I don't know the Currys.
The Curry, Khoury.
They were down on the corner of Pier Avenue and Garden Street, I believe.
Okay.
And they were candy. They made candy, and we got
peanut patties.
We got all the lefties.
And they were, I believe, Lebanese, either Syrian or Lebanese.
Yeah. Okay.
So there were lots of different ethnic groups that lived there.
I got a friend up in Foreman, Arkansas, named Bo Tanner, and we got to talking about Allendale, and he lived right there on next door to Rudy Medlin, who another Mexican family who he just died, unfortunately. And Bo said, well, anytime you want to talk about Allendale, let me, I can tell you all about my side. Up there 3 blocks down between me and Allendale School, between Buena Vista and Allendale School. So I can get you some words, my friend.
Oh yeah. I love it. And just to put kind of context, a lot of times people don't understand immigrant neighborhoods are kind of built, especially in those times. Like you said, there was a lot of prejudice, and a lot of the prejudice was built on either religious or what race, things like that. A lot of people don't understand that the Italians were, if you look back at some of the old newspapers back in that time frame, Italians and immigrants were always, let's say, blamed for something, right?
Sure.
A lot of the South Louisiana Italians in New Orleans were always blamed for drug pushing, right? They were always, and
we had the mafia heritage, and my people came over. I asked my dad one time, why did Papa come over here? He said, because he was afraid of the Black Hand. They migrated from Sicily to get away from the Black Hand or the mafia. That's why we're here. And thank God for that.
Oh yeah, I was actually, for a little while, my unit in the Navy was stationed in Italy, and I love going to Italy. I mean, Italy is Italy and Greece, two of my favorite places to go. Right. And just the history of Italy, the history of the Italian people, right? Just just centuries and centuries, and when I used to research and look at kind of the South Louisiana Italians and their presence in Louisiana, you also see the kind of demonizing of the Italians. It kind of it made me feel some type of way, being as an African American, just to see what they were doing. But that was just kind of, I won't say the norm in that time frame, but Italians, Jews, Lebanese, blacks, Spanish. That was
Jewish.
Go ahead.
I said Jews.
Yeah, Jews.
Like
yeah. I don't, growing up in Allendale, I don't remember any prejudice at all. We were all friends. We were all, in fact, the alley behind our house on Buena Vista, behind that alley was all African Americans. Well, when I was a kid and I used to run the neighborhood, if my cousins were down the street playing and I saw them and I wanted to start some action, my Uncle Pat had a two-story barn back there, and we had stairs up the side, and we'd barricade the stairs with cardboard and throw rocks at the African Americans. And if I wanted to get some action started and they were down here playing, and I said, I think I'll get some action, I'd go back in the alley and start throwing rocks at my cousins, who in turn thought it was the black people.
You get a fight going?
And we would get a rock fight going, and then the next day we'd be playing together. So there was, I don't recall any prejudice when I was growing up in Allendale.
Yeah,
we were friends and people.
Yeah, I always, especially when I always think about when immigrants come over from whatever country you're in, especially Europe in that time frame, and especially Italy in that time frame. Italians were more keen to seeing a lot more ethnicities. And probably when they came over, right? You got to think, especially where they're at in the Mediterranean. We did. A race is something that is made up, that is more of a Western thing.
Right.
It is more about your country, your culture, things like that in Europe, especially Italy, especially Greece, especially like North Africa and things like that.
Right.
You don't say, like you're saying, Sicily, or you're Sicilian.
Right.
When you went to Italy, you didn't say I was Italian. You said you were Sicilian.
That's right.
Well, in a way, it kind of reminds me of the difference between the northern United States and the southern United States. a lot of people up north look down on people from the southern part of this country.
Mhm.
There's a prejudice. I mean, all you do, you open your mouth,
Oh yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
like I've been in Boston or somewhere and they're like, oh my God, where are you from?
Yeah.
You know, and automatically I have to defend myself,
Mhm.
you know, and it's kind of the same in Italy. The people of Italy look down on the Sicilians.
Yeah.
And so the Sicilians were like, I'm not going to call myself an Italian. I'm a Sicilian.
Oh
You
yeah.
know, so it's that I want my heritage. I'm not one of them. I'm, you know, and that's the way they looked at it.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And I think it's something to be proud of because, you know, everywhere you go, people know Sicily.
Uh-huh.
Right? People know
Uh-huh.
Sicily. And
Right.
that is, if you know, even little kids growing up, you hear
Yeah.
it a lot, and you have so many people that claim their Sicilian heritage that have done
Right.
great things in America.
Right.
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 So, Mr. Bryant, what I've discovered, and I don't know if it's a fact, but most of the Italians in this area are Sicilian or have Sicilian ancestry.
And most are from Cefalù.
Yeah, and most of them,
Oh,
yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
oh,
That's a fact.
cool. And now tell me a little bit about the Sons of Italy.
Sons of Italy is I always thought the JCs were the greatest organization I ever joined. And not that I've joined many organizations, but I learned a lot in the JCs and I loved it. Unfortunately, it doesn't exist anymore, but the Sons of Italy is a bunch of Sicilians from Cefalù mostly. and they're just a great bunch of people. They're in every aspect of civilian life. A lot of it in the sheriff's department and politics. My uncle was a state representative for 16 years, and the governor called him a dago, and that kind of brought tears to his eyes. But
yeah,
we got over it. And Sons of Italy is a group of Italians that get together. And thank God they do. It's just a great group of people who get together, and we pray together, and we keep each other praised. We do St. Joseph's altars. It's just a
Community service.
Community service. Yeah, it's a community service organization composed of Sicilian Italians.
But the JCs are still around.
Okay.
Yeah, they're
You
still
just
around.
don't hear about them. They were more active when I was in.
Well, that could be.
Now JC's is
Junior Chamber of
Commerce.
Junior Chamber of Commerce.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Now you said St. Joseph. That's St. Joseph, and I hope I say this right. Gremillion.
St. Joseph Altar is
okay.
a celebration of, I guess, St. Joseph.
Yeah.
who always gave to the poor. I'm not really Italian enough to
He's the patron saint of Sicily.
And,
okay.
I know that.
Okay. He took care of the poor people.
Okay.
And now we honor him with an altar every year on St. Joseph Day, and every church or multiple churches, Catholic churches, have an altar. And I mean, this is an
full
altar.
Of food.
It's every food you can imagine, the best of the best, and you go and you enjoy and you break bread with your brothers.
I think it's sisters. March, isn't it March 19th every year?
No,
but it's
yes, you're right. March 19th. I just looked it up.
Yeah.
Okay. St. Joseph Day is celebrated in Italy on March 19th, and Italians open their hearts and pantries.
Yes.
That's right.
Yeah. First 3-tiered altars are erected in honor of the Holy Trinity, and the statue of St. Joseph surrounded by flowers, candles, and decorates the top tier. The next tier is foods like pasta, olive oil, fava beans, and baked goods.
But they don't bake that. I've never been to one where they cook the fava beans.
Okay.
The fava beans, because to cook them and eat them, you have to peel the outer core or the covering off of them. So they are usually blessed by a priest and put in a bowl on the altar, and you take one and you put it in your pocket or your wallet or whatever and carry it as a blessing all year long.
Kind of like the old Buckeye used to be.
And there's a bowl of lemons, and you're supposed to try to steal a lemon without getting caught. And if you do, then you're going to get married.
Oh, I love that.
And you eat fried fish because Jesus was a fisher of men.
Okay.
And they sprinkle breadcrumbs on it because his father Joseph was a carpenter, so that looks like sawdust. What else do they?
No, I don't know.
They have breads in the shape of fish and different crosses and things, and sometimes they bake hard-boiled eggs into them, colored Easter eggs into the bread, and weave it all around it.
I remember as a kid in half the third grade, I lived with my aunt and uncle who were devout Catholics. My brother and I did, and that's where I became acquainted with St. Joseph. And of course, after the third grade, I went to a different school. We moved into our new house in Queensboro, and I never knew anything about it until I joined Sons of Italy several years ago. And all of a sudden, I'm back in glory again, and there's St. Joseph here, and there's St. Joseph there, and you want to come to St. Joseph? I'm coming, and it just alters all the churches and schools.
Well, I know that St. Joseph's Catholic Church in Broadmoor has a St. Joseph altar every year.
Yeah.
Okay.
And anyone is welcome.
A celebration and the glory of St. Joseph.
And I love to hear the traditions of the old country, following the people to America, right? I just love to hear it because those traditions, kind of keep you grounded.
Sure.
Right. You said that when you finally got around the Sons of Italy, did you feel more grounded?
Oh, I felt like I was in heaven. I felt like I was around. I say it right. I told somebody the other day, that's the only social activity I have, and I love it. I love everybody there. Some of them I don't love as much, but I had a kind of that feeling with one fellow the other day, and he came up and he shook my hand. He said, "I'm so glad to see you, Chuck." And all that went away. But how about you in Allendale, man?
I mean, I am. I love coming home. I love talking to people about Allendale. I hate to see Allendale in the way it is right now, but I take solace in knowing that I am putting in the work to try to bring Allendale back.
Right.
I'm trying to, and being a part of Allendale Strong has, I'm hoping, give resolve to the people of Allendale and making Allendale into a better place for the future.
Right.
Residents of Allendale, because I'm looking toward the future. I want to talk. See, we have to talk about the past. We have to talk about the Italian immigrants, the Lebanese immigrants, the Jewish immigrants that were part of Allendale, just so the current people know and understand that this place has history. This place has been loved like you loved it.
Right.
People that you never knew
Yep.
stayed there. And the people in the future can look at Allendale and say, people have loved Allendale, have stayed here in great memories, and we can do the same.
Allendale.
We can do the same, So that's, go ahead.
I was just going to say, you were talking about the stores, the Italian stores. A lot of the Italians that moved up here got in either the grocery business or selling vegetables.
On a cart.
On a cart. That's what Grandpa did, didn't he? And so I have my uncle listed some of the stores, and a lot of these buildings are still standing. The Lewis Grocery, which was on Buena Vista, and
Pier Avenue.
At Pier Avenue.
Stan Lewis, Stan the Music Man,
who had the record store, and he was a producer of Paula Records. That's his family. And Bricadas Grocery, which was by Allendale School.
Well, you had Bricadas on the corner of Ford and Allen Avenue too.
Yeah.
That was C.O. Bricada.
And that store is still right there on the corner.
Down the street, you had Fred Fulco's store, who I never met, but I found out about him. There's several different. There's several different, two or more Fulco families in this area,
right?
Which is sometimes confusing to me and anybody else, because we have people that. Well, my Uncle Johnny married Aunt Mamie, and Aunt Mamie was a Fulco, and Johnny was a Fulco, and it kind of
but they weren't related.
Brought those two families together.
But the Lalinas.
Lalena's store was right down the street
on North Allen near the Swepco, where it dead ends into Swepco.
One block from Benvenuto.
Yeah. Consumer Grocery, that was the Bricadas.
Yeah,
okay.
There was Allendale Food Mart. And most of these people either lived next door or above their stores, but they were all through that neighborhood.
And Tony Fulco's store on Lawrence and Hope Street, where they lived, and I cherished my childhood there. And your question, go ahead and question again. Well, we can carry on forever, Mr. Bryant. We're so proud to have you with us, or have you have us. It's such a pleasure to be with you.
Let me show you. And actually, your daddy is in this picture. This is a picture of Allendale School. And this was the 3rd grade, I think. And most of these are Italian children from the neighborhood that would walk up to Allendale School. And one of these is Aunt Florence, and one of these is your daddy.
Well, I'll be darned.
Yeah. And
wow.
My mother said that and we're talking, she would have been in the 30s, that she was a student there. And she said she would walk from her house up to the school. And when it was time for lunch, they didn't have a cafeteria in the school at that time.
You brought your lunch.
You either brought it, or
when I went there.
They said there was a lady across the street named Mrs. Thomas, and she built a little house in her backyard. And she had picnic tables out in the yard, and the kids from school, and they had an hour for lunch. They would either bring a lunch, or they would walk to her house and eat hamburgers, hot dogs, sometimes a hot lunch, or they would walk home to have lunch. So I thought that was interesting that there was not a cafeteria there at first.
So I have a place over in DeBerry, Texas, and en route to DeBerry, there's a place called Bethany, Louisiana. And at Bethany, they have a little Bethany Thriftway store, and they have those R&B wieners, which used to be Wilson wieners. And I remember as a kid in Allendale School, I would go across the street, and I'd always have a hot dog. And it was made with Wilson weenies and chili or mustard, never ketchup. And when I take friends to my farm from here, I say, we're going to stop in Bethany, and I'm going to get you an Allendale banquet, which would be a bologna and cheese, or a salami and cheese sandwich on white bread. And that's the best food I ever ate. I still stop there every time.
I love it. That is wonderful. Now, with all of the family history that you have in Allendale, all of the family history that you have in Shreveport, and that goes back forever. Tell me one thing that just kind of makes you just one little, I guess one thing that makes you very proud to say, I called Allendale my home. Is there one instance where you can look back? I know you give me a lot already, but do you remember this one thing? Now, I give you an example. I always tell this story about Allendale. My sister went missing in Allendale one time, and my mother panicked, and she ran down the street, and she's asking people where she's at. And all of a sudden, before we knew it, everybody was outside looking for her. Everybody, the whole street, the Passman March, all the different streets. And it just so happened that my sister was in a house of a teacher, and the teacher was helping her out with some work. And the teacher came out. I heard some girl is missing, and we were yeah, the girl you with, my sister, right? So that I love to tell that story because it showed you that we knew everybody.
Community action, community all together. I did the same thing. I went to, we had a nice fluffy swing on the screen porch. Well, I went to sleep under the swing. And they were, where's Charlie Jr.? Charlie Jr. is missing. So the whole neighborhood was out looking for me. And I woke up, or they found, I don't remember the highway, but I woke up, I think, and they said, where you been? I ain't been nowhere. I've been sleeping under the couch.
And this was Aunt Johanna's house?
Aunt Johanna's
where
house,
the garden is.
on the street.
Yeah.
We have a big old puffy swing, and I was sleeping underneath it.
Yeah.
It's like a couch, and I went to sleep under that thing, and the whole neighborhood was looking for me.
Oh, that is
my favorite memory of Allendale, or one of them, is I was coming home from school one day, and I happened to run into my Uncle Johnny, who lived at 339 Allen Avenue, and he was either coming home for lunch or leaving. And I said, because I knew down the 1 block down the street, there was a store and you could buy penny candy. And I said, Uncle Johnny, give me a nickel. And he gave me 5 dimes. And I thought I thought I was rich. And I went to that store and I spent 2 of those dimes and saved the other 3. And I still saved.
Well, all right, now I'm going to show you a picture. And this is one of my favorite pictures, and that's my grandfather at 1424 Buena Vista, the house that he built, and my mother, and that's me on my mother's lap. So 3 generations. And here's another one. But when my parents got married, my grandfather said, well, I'll build you a duplex. There's another one at 1424 Buena Vista.
Lovely.
So he said, I've got a piece of property at North Allen. I'll build a duplex there, and you and your husband can live there and save your money until you have enough to buy a house. So I was born while they lived there.
I'll be there.
And when I was like 10 months old, we moved over into Queensboro in a house that we built. So I don't have any direct memories of Buena Vista, but the one memory or one story that I used to hear a lot about was my grandfather. See, my grandfather was the good brother. He was the fun brother.
He was the clown.
The clown, and he loved the kids in the neighborhood. So he would, I guess on a Saturday, because he was working at Standard Printing, standing at a press all day during the week, but he would gather up all the neighborhood kids and he would take them riding in his Model T, because he did not waste a dime, so he drove his Model T until it got wrecked. And then he bought a 48 Ford, which he drove until it got wrecked in 73. Anyway, he'd load all the kids onto the running boards in the back seat of the car, take them riding through town. He'd let them drive. Wow. Yeah. Like he would be behind the wheel, but he'd say, you push the pedal, you turn the wheel. And anyway, they get home and he would go in the kitchen and cook pasta for all the kids in the neighborhood. And my grandmother would be ready to kill him.
Yep.
Because he'd mess up the kitchen, and then the kids didn't want to eat what she was cooking, and and in fact, when he was coming home from work, my mother, when she was a little girl, about 5, would run down the driveway and jump on the running board, and he'd ride her into the driveway. Well, she slipped and fell, and he ran over her leg and broke it.
Oh,
yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, he did. But anyway, I thought that was a cute story about Grandpa. Well, we call him Papa, cooking pasta for all the kids.
I know, right?
I'll tell you a story about Papa, her Papa. When all the brothers worked at Standard Printing Company, with the exception of Frank and Tony and Johnny. Johnny was with the Board of Health, Uncle Tony owned the store, and Uncle Frank was standard printing. But
yeah.
But anyway, even when I was working every day, it come 5 o'clock, you'd hear Uncle Camille say, Allendale, and all the machines would go off and everybody would get in their car and then go to Allendale. That's where they all lived, and they had one company truck, and they all got in the truck and come home.
Oh wow! And you don't see, and that's what I'm talking about. Those are those wonderful stories. You know, those are those wonderful stories that just bring back great memories.
Right. Well, and you know, my uncle was talking about when he was a little boy, they would go down to the end of Buena Vista where the park was by the railroad tracks, and they would play in the park. And he said when a train would come, it would make huge billowing clouds of steam, and they would play in the steam clouds from the train.
We'd jump on the trains and hitch a ride across the trestle and jump off.
Yeah, and they'd put pennies on the track.
Put pennies on the track trying to wreck the train, and they'd just flatten out the pennies.
Yeah. He said it made it like a size of a quarter.
Yeah.
You know, they would play with that, and you know, just a lot of board games they would play in the afternoons because you didn't have TV.
And hide and seek, you know. I mean, back in
radio
and catch while they were still available. We used to catch lightning bugs at night.
Yeah.
You know, I saw one the other day, and I said, "Oh my God, they're still alive."
Well,
I know, right?
We spray for the mosquitoes and we kill the lightning bugs.
Pretty much.
That's what happens.
So. Yeah. I'm sorry. Yeah.
I tell you,
somebody ringing my doorbell. Sorry about that.
I had the experience and pleasure of going to Isla Mujeres, Mexico, about 12 or 15 years ago.
By Cancun.
And I had never been out of the country and never desired, but I went to because I wanted to, and I had a friend down there that had a bar, and I'm a musician, and he played music, and I knew I could play. So a friend and I went down there, and I say this because we walked everywhere. We wouldn't, there was no fear for some reason. And within 2 days of being there, I felt like I was in Allendale. And this was, I'm 50, 60 years old at that time. And I said, this is as peaceful as I've ever felt since I left Allendale. So that's why I love Allendale. It was peaceful. It's my home. It's just me.
Yeah. I mean, I still tell stories to my kids about growing up in Allendale and, you know, having great times and knowing people and talk about the family and things like that. And like I said, those are the things that ground you.
Yes.
Right? They ground you.
Sure, they do.
Yeah. Now, you know, with all of the things that are going on right now in the Allendale area, with all the things that are going on in the Shreveport area, what do you see or want to see in the future of Allendale and even Queensboro? Right? What do you want to see in the future? Do you want to see it become a residential area again? Right? What do you foresee for Allendale?
I don't know. I mean, I would hate to see us lose the neighborhood. Definitely a freeway through it is going to destroy any concept of it as a community. My mother said that before Interstate 20 was built, she used to walk up to Herbie K's from her house, and they would, you know, have a shrimp buster sandwich there, and you can't get there anymore. You know, that the I-20 totally split that neighborhood, destroyed West End.
We I can say this about Allendale right now because I'm there. I was over there yesterday. I love it. I'm over there every day doing something because I have the most wonderful tenant and her son in that house at 112 North Allen that I've ever had. And about, I'm going to say, I'm not good at time, but 5 to 10 years ago, we had a whole block. 10 to 20 years ago, Shreve Land Company went in there and they remodeled every shotgun house behind Buena Vista, behind the alley behind Buena Vista, north of Buena Vista Alley. They remodeled all the shotgun houses. They spent tons of government money. They lasted about 5 years, and they ended up being destroyed. And then several years ago, Shreveport decided to wipe out all those shotgun houses, and the neighbors say, well, they got rid of all the freebies, and Allendale is not dangerous anymore. Allendale, Greensboro is dangerous. Some other out south on Linwood's, Cedar Grove and Queensboro is dangerous. Allendale is as peaceful as you can be, and it's so pleasant to just go over there and sit on the porch and reminisce.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Queensboro, I don't know. I can't. I don't have any perspectives on it. Cedar Grove the same way. I don't know that they're ever worth. I think Allendale is too close to the city to run a highway through there and disrupt all those homes and disrupt all those families.
All that new construction that's taken place.
I don't really care one way or the other, but if I had a vote, I would vote to leave Allendale alone and put some money in there. I've always figured that if I could buy Allendale, I would buy it and put houses or apartments there, because it's 3 blocks from the city. Mm-hmm. It's 3 blocks from downtown. My daddy and I used to walk every day. We'd walk from in the evening and go down to Liggett's drugstore on the corner of Milam and I don't know what the street is, but it's a shame to see it happen. But if it happens, the powers that be handle that. We don't have a choice. But Allendale Strong is fighting it, and I'm on their side.
Yeah, our whole thing is one of the things that, and you could probably contest to this, and you even said it, Ms. Keith, you guys own the homes, right? Yeah. And I think that, you're gonna need rental properties, right? Rental properties are things that kind of help within the home structure also, but you also need home ownership.
We have that.
Sure.
We have that. When they tore down all these shotguns, before they even started, on the west side of Pier Avenue, all of that, Fuller Foundation came in and
Fuller Center for Housing.
And one of my best tenants owns a house back there, and all of those are home-owned houses.
Yeah.
And so that shows you that there is possibilities. And Allendale is not like people think it is.
Yeah.
But,
we owned we had a duplex on on Buena Vista. We had the home my grandfather built in the mid-30s on Buena Vista, and we had the duplex on North Allen
right next to mine
until 2 years ago. And one of our renters at 110 North Allen, Miss Johnny Ruth, she has been there for 42 years. She has been renting in that duplex.
And listen, as an aside, a few years ago, both of her sisters moved into my house at 112 North Allen. And I put a big sign up there on that corner, on that hill, the Johnson Bells of Allendale. All the 4 sisters lived there, and unfortunately one of them passed and the other one couldn't afford it. And
but 2 years ago we had to sell all our property because my uncle was in a nursing home, and we had to get him on Medicaid, and the only way we could get him on Medicaid was to sell everything off. My uncle would go down there on Sunday mornings at 8 a.m. and collect rent
every morning.
Never had any problem.
All his life.
Never had a problem. So yeah, we loved that property. And my uncle, when I get him out of the nursing home, he says, drive me to Buena Vista. I want to see the house. I want to see the house.
I've got to take you over there.
So yeah, there is a pride that we still have for being from Allendale.
Mhm.
And we always will. I've never been ashamed to say that my roots were in Allendale.
No, sir.
No reason to. No
I'm
reason
a
to at
harmonica
all.
player, and I call myself the Allendale harp player.
Hold on, because you, Miss Keith, you played the ukulele.
I play the ukulele.
Oh, so so you play the harmonica, a harp,
I do.
harmonica, and the ukulele. Oh, I want.
And we have a lot of cousins from the family that were in the music business.
A lot of them still are.
Yeah. It's very common.
All right.
Yeah.
We have one that's retiring or has retired as a captain on the fire department. He's the best guitar player in town.
Yeah.
His brother retired several years ago and
From the fire department.
And works for the big federal agent,
Homeland Security. But he's
Security.
not there anymore. He's now a pilot for some rich guy. Yeah, he's not. But they had a band in the 80s and they were on MTV.
Oh.
Yeah.
And they call the band Walker Street, which is the street they lived on over behind the fairgrounds.
Well, First Exit was the one that was on MTV. But then they had formed another band and they played around town and they call themselves Walker Street.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Now we're kind of moving into something different there. We got some musicians in the house. We got bands and MTV. Okay.
Yeah, I live in Allendale.
And I don't know whether you're aware of this, but when they built, was it I-49 exit, that interchange behind the police station, and they tore on Pier Avenue, they tore down the Italian Moderna building.
Oh yeah.
And they had to tear that down. I don't know if it's at Laurel and Pier, maybe.
It was at Laurel and Pier.
But it faced Pier. It was a 2-story red brick building.
Oh,
and
man.
they had not been in it for years. They moved out and took, I don't know if you knew the Progressive Men's Club. Cross Lake. Well, that's the old Italian Moderna Club. So they moved from Pier Avenue out to the lake, which unfortunately burned. But anyway, a lot of these buildings, here again, when they build these highways, they got to tear down.
Yeah, I mean, I have conversated with a lot of people on Facebook about the houses and the bakeries and the restaurants that were torn down for I-49 going through Cedar Grove.
Right.
And some people say, and you always find this, some people, they're like, hey, progress means taking out my house and my building. But other people have a connection with their homes. Other people have a connection with the building. Some people don't have those connections. Some people have those connections.
The power people have the money connection, and they got the power, and that's what Allendale Strong is fighting. And we will continue.
Oh, definitely will continue. Well, I am so happy to have you all on. I really would like to meet you guys face to face, but right now we're going through a pandemic. Yeah. But one day, hopefully soon, I will get to meet you all face to face, and and really start asking a little bit more questions about your history, because I believe that your history is important. Your history is important to Allendale, important to Shreveport, important to Louisiana, and America as a whole. So
I agree.
Thankful for you guys talking to me today.
Sure.
I have a 3-bedroom house. When you come down, if you need a place to stay, we'll clean one of those bedrooms out and just leave the bed and everything, and you're welcome to stay at my house.
Well, I'll thank you for the invitation, but you might have to fight my mother.
My mom. Probably so.
Then I'll come meet your mother.
Okay, we'll make that happen. Make that happen.
Is she still in Allendale?
Yes, she is. She stays on Clay Street, further up from the houses that Fuller Center built. So
Right.
Oh, right. Yeah, that's
Yes.
close to our place.
Yeah.
Yeah,
All right.
yeah.
Now let me ask you about a church, because my uncle mentioned a church called Mount Moriah Baptist Church.
Yes,
And is it standing?
yes, it is still there. Mount Moriah is still there. They actually have a park, Mount Moriah
Okay.
Park.
Okay.
So
Well, he said that that's not the original church, that it was at the end of Buena Vista behind the park and across the railroad tracks.
I don't remember a park at the end of Buena Vista.
Yeah, it's down there.
There's one now, but
Yeah.
there wasn't then.
Oh, well,
yeah, it wasn't then. Okay, yeah, yeah.
But anyway, he said that they would hear the choir practicing, in the evenings, because of course the windows were open, you didn't have air conditioning. And he said, I really love to hear the choir. And he said on Easter, I remember all the ladies in the choir walking and singing up the street going into the church. So,
Wow.
and he said he mentioned the church, and he said, I think they built a new church. Of course,
Yeah.
new 60 years old,
Well,
Yeah.
I credit my ear for music to a black church that was on the street behind Buena Vista. I think it's maybe Clay Street, it may be Austin. But I remember when I was a kid, I would sneak down the alley and crawl in between those houses and just listen to that beautiful music. And I really think that's where my ear for music came from. I credit it to that. It was such a blessing, and I think that's why I can play harmonica so well.
This one Blessed Sacrament, huh?
And I don't know what, it was a church, it seemed like it was in the middle of the block on Austin Street, I think is the name of it. And I just, as a kid, I'd go back there and listen to that anytime they had church and I was available, I'd sneak back there and hear that music.
Oh yes,
That's
some
my
beautiful
story,
music.
and I'm sticking to it.
There you go. There you go. Well, hey, it's probably spoke to your soul.
It did.
Yeah.
No question about it.
Oh yeah, it probably spoke to your soul. But
And you have too, Mr. Bryant, and I'm looking very forward to meeting you, sir.
I am looking forward to meeting both of you all. Like I said, I have been looking forward to this for so long, just because it kind of speaks to a lot of the my history, and it's what you're doing right now. You're connecting my memories together with and I love history. I'm an amateur historian, and what
I'm a
you're
retired
doing is
history teacher.
And I love history.
oh yeah. So see, you're connected, and I
Yes.
love that connection. I love that generational connection, one
Yes,
to the next, one to the next.
Absolutely.
And I've enjoyed this conversation. And like I said, I know that we're going to continue this conversation when I see you all again.
Bravo.
Good.
Bravo.
Thank you
It
so
was
much.
Such a pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you for hanging out with me today. And I just have to go through some pleasantries for the people that's listening on the podcast. Make sure that you listen to Allendale Strong Podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. And also, if you're watching this on YouTube, we're going to put some links up. We're going to put some links up to this Sons of Italy website. I think they have a website out there, if I'm not mistaken. And we may even throw in a couple of the places that they named. We might even throw in some Google Earth to Sicily. You can look around Sicily and take a look at the places that Mr. Fulco and Mrs. Keith named. So make sure you like and subscribe to the Allendale Strong YouTube page and listen to our podcast. And thank you and have a great day.
And you too, sir.
You
Thank
too.
you.